Relief sculpture. Relief sculpture is the technique where sculpted elements remain attached to a solid background of the same material. The term relief is derived from the Latin verb to raise. To create a sculpture in relief is to give the impression that the sculpted material has been raised above the background plane. We are going to be making relief sculptures out of cardboard. The content can be an animal, a landscape, such as this, or you can also create a portrait. As you can see here, the portrait also has elements that are in the background, the foreground, and the middle ground. And it also includes texture. Texture is a great way of showing contrast. What we want to begin, though, is you choose your subject matter and then find a really high quality reference photo. It can be one you take or it can be one you find online. This is the reference photo I chose for my example that I'm making for you. And then you decide what is the foreground, what is the thing closest to you, what is the middle ground in the image, and then what is the background. And often you'll have more than 3 layers, but you want to make sure to have at least 3. The more layers you have, the more interesting the sculpture. In mine, I ended up having quite a few, probably upwards of 9. In a portrait, you think about what would be closest to the viewer. If you reached out, what would be the first thing you would touch? Probably the shoulder, and then the nose, and then everything else recedes back into space from that. So I begin by tracing my photo. You can draw or you can trace, it doesn't matter, either one, but it should be relatively large. So I drew out each picture plane, and then using a graphite transfer, so I just use graphite, pencil on the back of my tracing, I trace it onto the cardboard, and then I cut out each layer individually. I want to really encourage you guys to think about texture and how you can utilize texture in order to show contrast. Contrast means a difference between 2 things. So I wanted to show those ripples in the field of where the plants were. So I exposed the corrugation in that area. I start with my background and I work forward, but I collect all of these layers before I ever glue anything together. And then with the mountains, you can also cut a thin slice in the cardboard and then push down part of the cardboard in order to show depth. So here I'm collecting all of my layers, placing them together, making sure that they look good together, working on my textures, exposing the corrugation to create that effect. Here I have 4 layers in order to create that very front layer, and I glue them all together just to make a little bit more volume. So again, I'm placing them next to each other and making sure everything works. The only thing that's glued together is the single layer itself. And then also using different kinds of cardboard in order to get a color difference can be really nice. So I have right here, I have egg crates, I have regular cardboard, and then I also have cereal boxes because they all have different colors. So it works really well. And think about when you're using corrugated cardboard, you can also like push down on certain levels in order to get the effect of something receding into space. So here I still haven't glued them down yet, but I'm beginning to place them together and make sure everything works the way I want it to. And then so I use rubber bands in order to hold everything in place when I do put the glue on. And then you also want to think about maybe setting a book or something heavy on top of it as they're drying in order to make sure that there's no buckling or folding of the cardboard as it's drying. And there's a lot of like ad-libbing. So I change things as I go. Sometimes I need to add a little extra here or take away a little bit there if it's not working. So here is my mount hood that I put on top there. Then I started thinking about my little details. So here I have some electrical poles for details that I end up putting on right at the end. And then you can see in the very foreground, I added the bird on a branch because I felt like it wasn't interesting enough um, with just the landscape. And then I also framed it up. You don't necessarily need to frame it up, but if you feel like it would benefit from it, by all means do so. And then your relief sculpture needs to be at least 1.5 inches depth. So it should come up at least 1.5 inches off of the background. It doesn't need to be low in the front like this and high in the back. Yours will depend entirely on the photo you choose. So we're going to begin with our reference photo, and then we're going to either draw or trace our reference photo in order to figure out what our first steps will be. So the first thing you guys are going to turn in is your drawing or your tracing of your reference photo. And you want to identify in that drawing which stages are cut out separately. And I will attach a example rough draft drawing to this assignment. All right, guys, we're going to get started.